All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. It's Dealer's Choice at the Federal Government Table, brought to you by the Clover Imaging Group. My name is Tim Cahill. I'm the Inside Sales Manager here at Clover, and I'm going to be your host for today. But before I introduce our presenters, I do want to review a few quick housekeeping notes. All of our attendees are in listen-only mode, so if you do have any questions, please type them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Once a question is answered, the question and the respective answer will become visible to all of our audience members. If for whatever reason we're unable to answer your question live, we will follow up with you individually after this meeting via email. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so if you have a hard stop or if anyone in your organization is unable to attend today, we will provide you with the full presentation recording via email. This is actually our second webinar focused on growing your company's business in the FedGov vertical, so if you have missed any of our webinars, the recordings are available to view at any time on demand on your dashboard of the cloverimaging.com website. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. We have our Senior Vice President of Global and Public Sector Sales for Clover Imaging Group, Mr. Steve Noyes, and then our Vice President of Federal Sales for Clover Imaging Group, Mr. Steve Reed. Thank you again for taking the time to be with us here today, and I will turn things over to Steve Reed to get started.
All right, thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Steve Reed. Steve Noyes will be coming in just a second here. We appreciate your joining us today. We recognize that we've got three types of dealers on today's call based on the registration information. About half of you have schedules already and are actively selling Clover to the federal government. Others are in the application stage of getting a multiple award schedule, or you've been recently awarded a contract and you're waiting for your offering to appear live on GSA Advantage. And then finally, there's several of you on the call today that are asking whether or not getting a schedule or contract is even the right thing for you. And if so, how can Clover help you achieve that goal? So we're going to try and speak to each of those groups during this call. First, let's review our agenda. We'll be talking today about the changing federal landscape, what's different now regarding the new administration and how it affects procurement, remanufactured imaging supplies, and our Clover authorized federal dealers. We'll provide an update on the health and strength of Clover as a company and what we're doing to address the government's return to the workplace under a new hybrid model. Steve Noyes will be covering that. We're going to talk about what our successful dealers are in this space, what they're doing to sell in this vertical, and provide an update on topics like the Verified Product Portal, which is of great interest to everybody, or it should be, and the importance of Section 889, among other things. And we'll talk about a recent major agency RFQ win as a case study and talk about what can be learned and how the success can be duplicated with other agencies and RFQs. And then finally, we're excited to launch and announce and provide a tour of our new federal microsite, which is a resource guide and sort of repository for everything that you'd need to be successful in selling our products to the federal government. So it's no secret that included in the proposed 2022 $6 trillion budget for things like COVID relief, federal agencies are going to receive a larger budget and staff increases. In particular, civilian agencies will receive an estimated budget increase of 16%, which is the largest ever increase in a non-wartime era. And the staff increases that'll bring, along with the workers filing back into the offices beginning hopefully right after the 4th of July, will definitely translate into more printing. That return to work is expected to occur under a hybrid model for most agencies, with staff rotating 3 days in the office and 2 days working virtually in a lot of the federal buildings and campuses. And we're just here to tell you today that as the #1 remanufacturer of imaging supplies, Clover is better positioned than ever to capture more OEM conversions. As federal users flee the high cost of OEM toners, coupled with the Biden administration's push to be more sustainable and supporting a higher focus on supporting the AbilityOne mission, which of course is now powered by Clover for toner and ink. Also, the GSA is doubling down on schedule enforcement. The Department of Justice was granted an initial $300 million budget increase, and they've adopted what can probably best be described as an activist enforcement agenda. So you can expect an increased focus on investigations and a higher number of GSA audits. So the message here is that Clover can count, you can count on Clover to keep you safe. So Steve Noyes will be talking more about that in a few minutes as well. So misrepresentation, of course, on the multiple award schedule is a felony. and the Department of Justice can prosecute offenders under the False Claims Act. You might have seen the article that came out about 10 days ago from Bloomberg Law about OS4 contract holder Shoplet, who settled a lawsuit alleging that it fired a whistleblowing executive for protesting a scheme to overcharge the federal government by driving buyers away from the FSSI program. So I want to turn it over now to Steve Noyes, who's going to talk a little bit more about the changing federal landscape.
Hey, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. We welcome all of our old friends and we welcome new friends, and we're very grateful that you chose to invest time with us this afternoon. We're not going to get into the deep details, but rather we're going to present opportunities and strategies that'll help grow your federal sales. The message on this slide is really amplified in our Stack the Deck theme, that Clover is a trusted partner with significant resources and vetted processes that help keep you safe and help you succeed. The environmental sustainability message is a global initiative. You may have seen the headlines that HP will introduce a remanufactured inkjet option in Germany. Joe Biden signed 2 executive orders in his first week to advance the environmental sustainability cause. This initiative is international, and the U.S. will help lead the effort. As an example, on January 6th, the EPA identified dangerous toxins that are present in low-grade toner and plastics. And the message here is recognize the liability, know your trusted partner. Products manufactured by Clover do not contain those dangerous toxins. Later, we're going to distribute an article from Tricia Judge, Executive Director of the International Imaging Technology Council, that will explain the EPA rule in detail and review the enforcement procedures. Another area is a focus on supply chain risk management. And a majority of the intelligence community consider China as the #1 threat to national security. Everyone will agree we're not where we need to be, as evidenced with the SolarWinds hack and the Colonial Pipeline ransom. Section 889 bans the sale and use of product from 5 telecommunications companies, 5 Chinese telecommunication companies. Some call this the Huawei order. It is expected that the number of blacklisted companies will expand. This list will expand. On May 12th, Joe Biden signed an executive order to improve cybersecurity. So GSA is very interested in the transparency of the products you sell and the identity of your vendor relationships. Message here is that Clover is acutely aware of, and we are monitoring the rules and procedures to ensure your eligibility to sell seamlessly to the federal government. It's also interesting to note that based on the history of the new GSA director and recent news from the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, CISA, and that the March activation of the Stafford Act that opened GSA Advantage to states, cities, K through 12, colleges, and universities, many expect that federal supply chain risk management policies will eventually apply to the broader public sector. And the next slide. The mission of AbilityOne has always been a focus. This is the largest program in the world to employ and advance the blind and the handicapped. Many federal agencies have set aside purchasing objectives to accommodate AbilityOne, or just preferences to accommodate AbilityOne, and GSA has pledged 2% purchases this year. With AbilityOne imaging supplies powered by Clover, agencies can satisfy these purchasing objectives with both products and fulfillment through the network of 279 authorized AbilityOne distributors, because some of those dealers may meet the criteria for any of the 17 socioeconomic statuses. So we know GSA and the agencies have AbilityOne preferences and goals. So compared to other AbilityOne product categories like pens, consider the return on investment of AbilityOne toner. This is a relatively big ticket item that has a high rate of consumption, so it's easy to track and report. For example, agencies can pay a range of $35 to $50 for monochrome cartridges, or a range of $200 for a series of 4 color cartridges. On average, imaging supplies can be replaced every 6 to 8 weeks. So this is a high velocity product category that can quickly satisfy those set aside goals. To help explain the AbilityOne mission to agencies, please share the NIB and the Source America links, and also the American Dream video that's featured here. Steve Reed and I hope to visit with you during the NIB conference in Crystal City, Virginia on October 12th through 15th. Please make an effort to stop by the Alabama Industries for the Blind booth, and Suzanne Willis will be there. And please stop by the Tri Industries booth, and Jay Burrell will be there. So we can go to the next slide.
And gentlemen, before we do move on to the next subject, I would like to propose a couple of the questions before we get too far away from our topic. The first of which I can handle, which is, will we be sending out this slide deck after? We will have this slide deck available in a PDF form. Please get with your Clover account manager or your primary Clover contact to receive that. And like I mentioned earlier, the recording of this will be going out shortly after this call. The next one is regarding Steve Noyes, regarding that reporting and tracking that you mentioned. Certain OEMs make their dealers report the identity of their end users. Does Clover require customer data share to become an authorized dealer?
Thank you, Tim. That's a great question. Now, these are your customers, and this is your confidential data. But the question does call to mind the differences between certain OEMs and Clover. As a long-term policy, Clover does not sell directly to end users. Our strategy is to exclusively sell through our distribution partners. Certain OEMs do sell direct. Clover does not. We don't have an instant ink consumer fulfillment program, nor do we have an erosion tolerance policy. We want you to be confident that we are your trusted partner and not your competitor.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And then there's one other question. How does Clover help their dealers meet the GSA requirements for hosting a recovery program when selling toner?
Oh, thank you, Tim. Yeah, the last two sentences on the GSA e-library, when you look up the special identification number SIN 339940 and OS4, require dealers that sell toner to provide a recovery solution. So through Clover's recycling site, our dealers can enable their customer agencies not only to recover, but also to report their collection results. And through our environmental calculator, our dealers can enable their customer agencies to quantify and celebrate the reduction of their carbon footprint and the pounds of plastic that they've kept out of the landfills.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, then I will turn it back to you two for resuming the content. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tim.
So in the context of the COVID pandemic, we wanted to share an update on Clover. And I'm very pleased to report that Clover is stable and healthy. We've emerged from COVID as a stronger company. Since March of 2020, our industry has witnessed changes in the population and the leadership of privately held and publicly traded companies. For example, last week, the president of Staples stepped down. In the systems furniture world, who would have guessed a merger between Herman Miller and Knoll? And every OEM has had changes in their senior leadership team. In contrast, Clover has had no changes in our senior leadership team. Jim Serkleski, Eric Martin, Jim Ross, and our management team remain your dependable, best-in-class provider of remanufactured imaging supplies, parts and kits, wide format inkjet, and now introducing information technology, asset disposition, computer servers and parts, barcode labels, and printers. So as the OEMs are pulling back, Clover's introducing new and creative programs to support our partners. And we are grateful for our strategic partners, the wholesalers, the buying groups, BTA, the BSA, Mike Tucker and the team from the Independent Office Products and Furniture Dealers Association, GSA and the AbilityOne Commission, and Tricia Judge from the International Imaging Technology Council. Please visit her new website using the link provided on this page. And the next page.
Thanks, Steve. So Clover's authorized federal dealer program is now in its 4th year, and we wanted to take a couple minutes to review some of the strategies that we've seen that differentiate our top selling dealers in our program, because there are some definite patterns. As I look at our top 15 or 20 dealers, the first thing that really stands out is that it's not all about price. You know, that can be counterintuitive to what you might expect. I mean, you think about how GSA ranks its search results on GSA Advantage. By default, it's returning search returns from the lowest to the highest price. And most federal government RFQs are LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. But when I look at our stack ranking of our dealers by revenue for the last 3 years, and then I look at their price on GSA Advantage, the top selling dealers really are in the middle of the pack when it comes to their contract price. I mean, having the lowest price is really, you know, it certainly is a strategy in the office supply space, but I'm just basically trying to say that it's not necessarily the most successful strategy when you look at the Clover top federal dealers. Our top dealers are those that are selling with one or more salespeople making outbound calls, selling on value and relationships, and focusing on OEM conversions. That's really where the gold is. Every year, the government buys $600 to $700 million in toner to feed their devices. And the majority of that is OEM being sold at very high prices. That represents an opportunity for Clover and for our dealers. There's no question the OEM product works. Nobody would question that. Nobody ever got their hand slapped in the government for buying OEM. But I'm here to tell you that the remanufactured product that Clover makes and the AbilityOne product that's offered now powered by Clover works equally well as proven by buyers lab studies, oftentimes with higher yields, always at a substantial savings, and always offering a sustainable solution over the OEMs. If you can get your account managers and your salespeople revved up about that, then being the lowest price by a few bucks against another Clover dealer or other remanufacturer won't be the differentiator. Focus on those OEM conversions. The other noticeable differentiator that sets our top dealers apart is using our product content. So the verified product portal that Steve will cover in a second will eventually take care of this, as the GSA will use Clover's manufacturer provided content for all Clover items and AbilityOne toner. But in the months between, as we wait for that full launch, take a minute to review the content of the Clover items on your schedule. Are you using Clover Imaging Group as the manufacturer name? Are you using our high-res images that we provided? Have you loaded our GSA content that we sent you that's formatted for ease of use with SIP, Schedules Input Program? I spend a lot of time reviewing our dealer schedule content, and I find that their Clover listings sometimes don't even make sense. There's no images, there's truncated titles, bad descriptions. I mean, this isn't really rocket science, but honestly, just take a look at the items on your contract and ask yourself, if this was Amazon, if I was buying something on this website as a private user, would I buy this listing? Would I even give it a second look if there's no picture? Again, it's not all about price. Look at how your items are being represented. And if you're using a GSA consultant firm to manage your schedule, send them our content file and be clear with them. Say, this is the content that I want you to use for the Clover items on my contract. Don't use content from anybody else, any other content provider, because it's not going to be, I've seen time and again, it's just not formatted correctly, and it's going to look like a hot mess on your schedule. I know that a lot of the contract holders on this call use Price Reporter or Gloria Lewis LLC to manage their schedules. We recommend both of them. Both of those companies are able to make these changes quickly. They just need to hear from you that this is what you want them to do, and then they can take action. They're ready to go and ready to make those changes. So as I mentioned before, the content will eventually be managed by the Verified Product Portal, but it could be a while before that's live. So capitalize on the 2020 fiscal year buying season now and make those changes. Don't wait for the VPP. So speaking of the VPP, let's turn it over now to Steve Noyes to give an update on the implementation.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. We're excited. The VPP is going to be a game changer. It was years in development. GSA's invested millions of dollars to create an enhanced shopping experience. Navigability and maneuverability have been improved. It provides an elevated search engine optimization feature, and it will enable real-time enforcement. The forecast is that GSA is going to launch phase 1 sometime after Labor Day and before October 1st, and they're going to integrate images and content right into the multiple award schedule. By mid-2022, GSA is going to integrate PDFs and videos into that multiple award schedule. And about at the same time, GSA is going to launch a unilateral robo-removal campaign that will challenge suspect SKUs for ETS and country of origin, et cetera. Clover was first. Clover was the first trusted partner to help launch this VPP project. So our images and content are already loaded, and the links on the bottom of this page will provide additional insight into the VPP. Next slide. Well, hey, we wanted to share the IRS victory as a case study example. We see many agency RFQs are unintentionally dated, and they can rely upon old, legacy, irrelevant language. If you see an RFQ posted on eBuy or Unison, please get us involved as early as possible. Together, we've got the highest probability of changing the language if we're engaged early and if we submit a pre-solicitation protest. It's tough, but not impossible to overturn an award after it's been announced. So an objective is to educate the contracting officer, and that can be accomplished by sharing portions of the recent blog referenced on this page. We cite precedent examples by referencing approved standards and accepted terminology as supported by industry, associations, and academia, and the GSA and the critical information tabs. And we highlight the Clover experience specification and the enforcement guidelines for remanufactured imaging supplies. Both of these are explained and available in the blog posted on this page. Next slide.
All right. Do we have any more questions, Tim, before I get into the microsite tour?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I was actually just going to stop you. So there's just one regarding the before the microsite. What do schedules? It's regarding the content you had alluded to earlier. What do schedule holders need to do to activate that content or even acquire that content that Clover provided the GSA?
So Tim, the GSA is going to synchronize the dealer's schedule according to each dealer's merchandising selections. So GSA is not going to add manufacturers or SKUs. If a schedule holder features SKUs from any of the 875 manufacturers or any products that are featured on Authorized, then only those SKUs will be automatically synchronized. We talked about phase 1 being approved images and content, and phase 2 including PDFs and videos.
Okay, perfect. And then one other one. It appears that there's still some gaming of the system, for lack of a better term, or outright cheating when it comes to selling on the GSA. What is Clover doing to curb that, and what can dealers do to encourage Clover to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. That is a great question. We have collaborated with the GSA for the last 5 years on the round table, and Clover contributed and supported GSA when they launched the Imaging Supply Manufacturers Association program. They invited those authorized manufacturers to post the names of their authorized dealers on the BSA website. By putting those names in the public domain, they deputized this entire platform. Dealers, manufacturers, GSA contracting officers can identify anyone that oversteps. And the message here is, if you see something, say something. And a suggestion is to notify GSA. An avenue for resolution is to visit the GSA e-library and enter the name of the suspect dealer. The attendant information that will pop up will identify the dealer's contracting officer. Reach out to that contracting officer with evidence in an email and report that suspect dealer. They won't react to a phone call, but if you've got an email and evidence, then you'll get action. Thank you, Tim.
No, thank you. And back to you guys. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tim and Steve. So in the time remaining here, it's 22 past. We wanted to give you a tour of our newly launched federal microsite. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour here, this new site is a resource guide and repository of everything that you need to be successful in selling our products to the federal government. So to access the site, just go to cloverimaging.com, click on Partner Center at the top, and then click on Authorized Federal Dealer Program. And you'll see that the site is divided into 2 sections. The first here on the left is for dealers interested in joining our federal program, or who would like to learn more about getting a multiple award schedule. And that page, that section there is actually available to everyone without a password. And then when you click through, you're presented with the features and benefits of our program, which include obtaining Clover authorization to sell our product to the federal government, which GSA requires for all dealers offering Clover and the OEMs like HP, Lexmark, and Xerox to the federal government. We offer an aggressive federal price plan, back-end rebates, on products that ship to the federal government, and access to other tools that'll help you be successful in this space. And it also outlines the requirements needed to receive and maintain authorization, including the need to sell at least $25,000 in toner and ink and parts annually to the federal government. And then the second section of the site is dedicated to our current Clover authorized federal dealers. That section is password protected, and you're going to use the same login that you'd use to access the other features of cloverimaging.com. Just be sure to contact your account manager for access if you don't already have it. If you already have a login, or if you're set up as a Clover customer, you still need to register for access to the site to access all the features of it. So just be sure to do that, and if you want to see the content that I'm about to share. So this section is divided into 4 resource sections: AbilityOne, GSA resources, Clover administrative resources, and Clover marketing resources. So I want to go over each of those one by one here briefly. So AbilityOne, continues to scale, of course, and more dealers are applying to become an AbilityOne authorized dealer. There's currently 187 AbilityOne mandatory buy toner SKUs. A lot of the people on this call have a GSA schedule, but chose not to be an AbilityOne distributor when you got your schedule. It wasn't required back in the day, but now, of course, it is if you are getting a new schedule. If you'd like to become one, if you're recognizing the fact that we're scaling towards 300 SKUs that'll be mandatory buy in the not too distant future, and you want to understand how to become an AbilityOne authorized dealer, you can click on this first link. We're also posting the list of mandatory buy SKUs by NSN here, along with a cross-reference of which Clover items and other Clover manufactured brands like Innovera, Office Depot, and so on that compete from an essentially the same or ETS standpoint. That list is updated throughout the year as items are added to the mandatory buy list. And then next, we've got a content file for AbilityOne items. We've had great feedback on this. This is a content file that's formatted for SIP that will give you the products, titles, and descriptions and everything that you need to fit into GSA Advantage's titles and description compartments. So be sure to use that to help bridge the gap between now and the time that the Verified Product Portal is live. So the second section of 4 is our GSA support section. And we've included several resources here. The first is a link to the Vendor Support Center, which includes a comprehensive vendor toolbox, information on how to get live on GSA Advantage, information about transactional data reporting, and who to call for various issues. The second link is within the Vendor Support Center on how to apply for a GSA schedule. And then we've also included a great link here that is part of GSA's new vendor training series that does a deep dive into TAA compliancy. So especially if you're a new dealer in this space, you'll want to understand why it's crucial to understand this, the implications of a violation of it, the rules of engagement, and so on. And finally, we've got a link to support the latest updates from GSA regarding the Verified Product Portal and its implementation. So our aspiration with this microsite is that it'll be dynamic. So check back for the latest information from both Clover and GSA. And then the third of 4 sections includes Clover resources for your schedule. So first, we've got a link to our latest Clover Authorized Federal Dealer Program. That's something that all dealers need to sign each year in order to be eligible for rebate payments. And it outlines everything you need to know about our program. We sent this out to our existing dealers at the beginning of the year, but if you ever need to see a copy of what you signed, you can access that on this page. And then next, we've got our country of origin file. That's a quarterly correspondence that's sent out to partners that have received a letter of supply from Clover. And that's intended to authenticate the country of origin for the next 90 days to enable our partners to validate the TA compliancy if challenged by GSA. So we proactively send that out at the beginning of each quarter. But if you ever need to access it, this is a current copy. I wanted to point out that this is not designed to be a GSA content file. It's simply a communication to validate the country of origin. So for GSA content like titles, descriptions, images, and so on, you'll want to use this third link, which is our GSA content file formatted for use with GSA Schedules Input Program, also known as SIP. That file also frequently is updated as we add new products, remove discontinued products, and so on. It includes not only our TA compliant toner and inkjet SKUs, but also our top selling remanufactured parts like drums and maintenance kits and so on. Parts represented 15% of the revenue for Clover in this space last year. So remember to load those items to your schedule. A lot of dealers miss out on that opportunity, and that's a big revenue source. And then finally, we have our Clover marketing section. So from here, you can create customized collateral, co-branded with your company logo and contact information. There's a link to our video library, which is great to share with end users looking to understand the value of our products. We've got a great resource here called Why Federal Agencies Choose Clover to help with both OEM and converting from other remanufactured companies. So with that, we are going to be posting this blog or this deck on the website, and it will include our contact information. We wanted to encourage everyone to sign up for our FedGov blog, which is published by Steve every month. Steve Noyes has some really fantastic resources and kind of consolidates. He scours the industry every month looking for news and updates that can be useful to our family of dealers. So be sure to subscribe to that. And then in closing, Steve Noyes wanted to make a few final comments here.
Hey, yeah, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. In closing, we do understand that this is a complex market and a SKU-intensive industry. And as you decide what to focus on, we ask that you strategically consider that there's currency in conversation, there's dollars in dialogue, and calculate the return of investment on your time investment. Be a student of your invoices, sell what sells, but steer what your agency customers buy. Ask that chief acquisition officer, that purchasing manager, what are your purchasing objectives? And the chances are high that you can be that consultative resource by leveraging the Clover proposition of best value and savings, the green environmental sustainability message, and of course, the AbilityOne imaging supplies powered by Clover, provided by dealers with a socioeconomic status. Your team can hunt with this category. Most imaging supply purchases in the FedGov are transactional. Ask to see their usage history. Plug that data into our annualized savings calculator to quantify that compelling message of annualized savings rather than by each cartridge. Get the usage for the entire fleet for the year. So we are very grateful to those dealers that have selected Clover. And to those that are curious, we invite you to connect with us and allow us to earn your business. This is such an exciting time to sell into the federal government because of this staggering federal budget, the proposed 3.5 years of federal agency growth with an expanded workforce, the TAA and 889 compliancy, and the hardworking team at GSA is changing the multiple award schedule. They're leveling the playing field for reputable dealers and creating a trusted marketplace for all stakeholders. Our team can help you design your federal sales playbook. The Clover proposition resonates across the federal ecosystem. So let's schedule an appointment together. And in closing, we thank all of our listeners and we thank our Clover marketing team for helping to build this and run it. So we'll turn it over to Tim.
Awesome. Thanks again, gentlemen. With that, I would also like to thank Steve and Steve for coordinating the time today. And on behalf of myself and Clover, once again, thank all of our attendees for spending some time with us today. We hope that you found it informative and enjoyed it. Any questions remaining in the Q&A section will be followed up on by Steve and Steve individually. And as a reminder, the Clover marketing team will send out this recording for anyone who joined late, left early, or wasn't able to attend. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.